Jae-hyun tightened the wrench around a bolt and gave it one last turn. The hum of machinery filled the air, drowning out even his thoughts. He worked in silence, like always, his hands moving with practiced precision. Around him, the orbital shipyard stretched endlessly, a maze of steel beams, glowing panels, and hovering drones. It was a place built for efficiency, not comfort. Every corner reminded Jae-hyun that he wasn't free. None of them were. Earth had been under the thumb of the Zarkon Dominion for nearly 2 centuries now. To the aliens who ruled the galaxy, humans were little more than tools. Cheap labor to mine resources, build ships, and keep their empire running smoothly. They called it civilizing humanity, but Jae-hyun knew better. Civilized people didn't live in fear. Civilized people weren't forced to work until their bodies broke down, only to be replaced by someone else just as desperate. He glanced at the clock on the wall. His shift would end soon, which meant another day closer to surviving this nightmare. But survival wasn't enough anymore. Not for Jae-hyun. Not after everything he'd seen. As he finished his task, a loud clang echoed through the bay. A damaged cruiser floated nearby, its hull scorched for what looked like a recent battle. Repairs were needed urgently, so the foreman ordered Jae-hyun to check it out. Reluctantly, he grabbed his toolkit and climbed aboard. The inside smelled of burnt metal and oil, a sharp contrast to the sterile environment of the shipyard. Jae-hyun moved carefully, inspecting every panel and wire. He wasn't supposed to ask questions about why certain ships came back in pieces, but curiosity often got the better of him. This time, however, something caught his eye. Behind a loose panel near the engine core, there was a small compartment he hadn't noticed before. Frowning, he pried it open. Inside lay an object unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was roughly the size of his palm, smooth and metallic, with faint etchings along its surface that seemed to shimmer when touched. As Jae-hyun picked it up, a strange warmth spread through his fingers. For a moment, he thought he heard whispers, soft, indistinct murmurs that faded as quickly as they appeared. His heart raced. What was this thing? And why did it feel alive? Before he could think too much about it, alarms blared throughout the shipyard. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an eerie glow. Someone shouted orders over the intercom, though Jae-hyun couldn't make out the words. Whatever this artifact was, it clearly wasn't meant to be found. Without hesitation, he slipped it into his pocket and hurried off the ship. Back in his tiny apartment in Seoul's underground slums, Jae-hyun examined the object more closely. Hai-rin sat across from him, her arms crossed and her expression skeptical. She was his childhood friend and one of the few people he trusted completely. Like him, she hated the Dominion, though she expressed her anger more openly. While Jae-hyun worked quietly within the system, Hai-rin spent her days organizing protests and smuggling supplies to rebel groups. "What is that?" she asked, leaning forward to get a better look. "I don't know," Jae-hyun admitted. "I found it on a Dominion ship. It feels important." Hai-rin frowned. "Important how?" "It's hard to explain." He hesitated, then added, "It talks." Her eyes widened. "Talks? You mean like voices?" "Not exactly. More like impressions, feelings. I think it wants me to do something." She stood abruptly, pacing the cramped space. "This could be dangerous, Jae-hyun, if the Dominion finds out you have it." "They already know," he interrupted. "That's why the alarms went off earlier. They're probably looking for me right now." Hai-rin stopped mid-step, her face pale. "Then you need to get rid of it. Destroy it before they come knocking." "No!" Jae-hyun shook his head firmly. "I can't. Not yet. There's something here, something big. Maybe even a way to fight back." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Hai-rin sighed and sat back down. "Fine. But if you're to keep it, we need to figure out what it does. And fast." Over the next few hours, they experimented cautiously. When Jae-hyun held the artifact, it began to glow brighter, projecting a holographic map onto the wall. The image showed star systems, planets, and lines connecting them in intricate patterns. Some areas pulsed faintly, while others remained dark. Symbols hovered above specific points, written in a language neither of them recognized. This has to be some kind of navigation system, Hai Rin said, tracing one of the lines with her finger. But where does it lead? I don't know, Jae-hyun replied, but I think it's showing us something important, something the Dominion doesn't want anyone to see. Their conversation was cut short by the sound of heavy boots outside their door. Someone, or several someones, was coming. Panic surged through Jae-hyun as he scrambled to hide the artifact. Hai Rin grabbed a makeshift weapon, ready to defend them if necessary. The door burst open, revealing 3 Dominion enforcers clad in black armor. Their leader stepped forward, his helmet visor reflecting the dim light. "You've been tampering with restricted property," he growled. "Hand it over." Jae-hyun froze, unsure what to do, but Hai Rin acted first. With a swift motion, she swung her weapon, catching one of the enforcers off guard. Chaos erupted as the other 2 lunged toward them. In the confusion, Jae-hyun grabbed the artifact and shoved it into his coat pocket. Together, he and Hai Rin fought their way out of the apartment, narrowly escaping into the labyrinthine streets below. Behind them, the enforcers shouted orders, their footsteps echoing ominously. Jae-hyun and Hai Rin ran as fast as they could, weaving through alleys and ducking into shadows. They couldn't go home now. It was no longer safe. All they had was each other and the mysterious artifact burning a hole in Jae-hyun's pocket. As they reached the edge of the city, Jae-hyun paused to catch his breath. Looking up at the night sky, he felt a strange sense of determination wash over him. Whatever this object was, it had chosen him for a reason. And maybe, just maybe, it held the key to changing everything. "Where do we go now?" Hai Rin asked, her voice steady despite the chaos. Jae-hyun clenched his fist around the artifact. "We find answers," he said, "and we take back what's ours." With that, they disappeared into the darkness, leaving behind the chains that had bound them for far too long. Jae-hyun and Hai Rin moved quickly through the shadows of Seoul's underground slums, their breaths visible in the cold night air. Behind them, the faint hum of Dominion enforcer drones grew louder, scanning for any sign of movement. The 2 friends pushed themselves harder, knowing that stopping meant capture, or worse. After what felt like hours of running, they finally reached a hidden door tucked away in an abandoned subway station. Hai Rin knocked 3 times in quick succession, then twice more slowly. A small panel slid open, revealing a pair of wary eyes. "Password," came a gruff voice from the other side. "Freedom burns brighter than chains," Hai Rin replied without hesitation. The door creaked open, and they were ushered inside by a group of armed rebels. The space beyond was dimly lit, but buzzing with activity. People worked at makeshift stations, repairing weapons, decoding messages, and planning strategies. This was the Resistance, a network of fighters determined to overthrow the Zarkon Dominion. At the center of it all stood Eun-woo, the leader of this particular cell. He was tall and lean, with sharp features and a calm demeanor that masked his fierce determination. When he saw Jae-hyun and Hai Rin, he nodded in greeting but wasted no time on pleasantries. "What did you bring me?" Eun-woo asked, gesturing toward the artifact clutched tightly in Jae-hyun's hand. Jae-hyun hesitated before placing the object on the table between them. As soon as he let go, the artifact began to glow softly, projecting the same holographic map they'd seen earlier. Murmurs rippled through the room as others gathered around to get a closer look. "This is impossible," one of the rebels whispered, his voice filled with awe. Eun-woo studied the map carefully, his brow furrowed in thought. Finally, he turned to Jae-hyun. "Do you know what this is?" Jae-hyun shook his head. "Not exactly, but I think it's connected to something called the chains." "The chains?" Hai Rin echoed, her tone skeptical. "What are those supposed to be?" Eun-woo sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Legends say the chains are devices scattered across the galaxy. They suppress free will, control entire populations, and enforce loyalty to the Dominion. If we could destroy them," his voice trailed off, but the implication hung heavy in the air. Hai Rin crossed her arms. "And you believe this thing can help us do that?" "It's not just belief," Jae-hyun interjected. "When I touch it, I feel something, like it's guiding me." Eun-woo raised an eyebrow. "Guiding you where?" "To the first chain. Jae-hyun said simply. It showed me coordinates near Jupiter's moons. The room fell silent. For years, the Resistance had dreamed of finding the chains, but no one had ever gotten close. Now, here was a chance, not just to strike back at the Dominion, but to change the course of history itself. But opportunity came with risk. Kao Vorn, the ruthless commander leading the Dominion's hunt for Jae-hyun and Hyrin, wasn't far behind. His forces were already combing the city, using advanced tracking technology to pinpoint their location. Time was running out. We need to move, Eun-woo decided. Take only what's necessary. We'll leave tonight. That evening, the group boarded a stolen Dominion scout ship, its sleek design blending seamlessly with the stars as they escaped Earth's atmosphere. Among the crew was Soo-jin, a former Dominion scientist who had defected after witnessing the horrors inflicted upon enslaved civilizations. Her knowledge of Dominion technology proved invaluable, helping them navigate heavily patrolled space lanes and avoid detection. As they traveled, Jae-hyun spent most of his time studying the artifact. Each time he touched it, the connection grew stronger. Faint whispers filled his mind, speaking in a language he couldn't understand yet somehow knew instinctively. Images flashed before his eyes, visions of battles fought long ago, of worlds burning under the Dominion's rule, and of a woman named Solara. Solara was different from anyone else in the visions. She radiated strength and wisdom, commanding armies of humans and aliens united against a common enemy. In one scene, she stood atop a crumbling tower, holding aloft a glowing staff identical to the artifact Jae-hyun now carried. Her voice echoed in his mind. The chains must fall. Only then will the galaxy breathe freely again. But Solara's presence wasn't comforting. It was overwhelming. Sometimes, Jae-hyun felt like he was losing himself, his own thoughts drowned out by hers. Hyrin noticed a change and confronted him during a quiet moment aboard the ship. "You're not okay, are you?" she said softly, sitting beside him in the cargo hold. "I don't know," Jae-hyun admitted. "Every time I use the artifact, it feels like it's pulling me somewhere, like I'm becoming someone else." "That's dangerous," Hyrin warned. "We can't afford to lose you, not now. Promise me you'll be careful." He nodded, though doubt lingered in his chest. Careful or not, there was no turning back. The artifact had chosen him, and he owed it to everyone suffering under the Dominion's tyranny to see this through. Days later, they arrived at their destination, a massive structure orbiting one of Jupiter's moons. From a distance, it looked like a colossal ring encircling a dark core. Energy crackled along its surface, pulsating with a sinister rhythm. This was the first chain. "It's bigger than I imagined," Soo-jin murmured, adjusting the ship's scanners. "And heavily guarded. Automated drones patrol the perimeter, and there's a shield protecting the entire structure. We'll have to disable the shield first," Eun-woo said, studying the readings. "Jae-hyun, can the artifact do that?" Jae-hyun hesitated. Using the artifact drained him physically and mentally, but he didn't see another option. "I'll try." With the others providing cover, Jae-hyun focused all his energy on the artifact. It responded immediately, glowing brighter than ever before. Lines of light shot outward, latching onto the chain's defenses. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. The drone stopped moving, the shield flickered, and even the stars appeared to dim. Then chaos erupted. Alarms blared as the shield collapsed, giving Eun-woo and Soo-jin a brief window to infiltrate the chain. Hyrin stayed behind with Jae-hyun, keeping watch over the ship while he recovered from the strain of channeling so much power. Inside the chain, Eun-woo and Soo-jin discovered a labyrinth of machinery humming with dark energy. Conduits lined the walls, pulsing with stolen life force harvested from countless beings. It was horrifying, but also awe-inspiring, a testament to the Dominion's cruelty and ingenuity. While Soo-jin worked to disable key systems, Eun-woo planted explosives at strategic points throughout the structure. Their goal wasn't just to destroy the chain. They wanted to send a message to the Dominion. Humanity would not be silenced. Back on the ship, Jae-hyun experienced another vision. This time, Solara appeared directly before him, her expression grave. "Destroying the chains will unleash chaos," she warned. Countless beings have grown dependent on their influence. Without them, the galaxy may tear itself apart. But if we don't destroy them, the Dominion wins, Jae-hyun argued, his voice trembling. Isn't freedom worth the risk? So Lara didn't answer. Instead, her image faded, leaving Jae-hyun alone with his doubts. Was he doing the right thing? Or was he playing into the Dominion's hands, creating a new kind of prison? Before he could dwell on it further, Eun-woo and Soo-jin returned, breathing hard but victorious. We've set the charges, Eun-woo announced. Let's get out of here. They barely made it back to the ship before the explosives detonated, engulfing the chain in a brilliant explosion of light. Shockwaves rippled through space, disrupting communication and control systems across the solar system. On nearby colonies, people cheered as Dominion broadcasts went silent. The uprising had begun. For the first time in centuries, humanity dared to hope. But as Jae-hyun gazed at the artifact in his hands, he couldn't shake the feeling that their fight was far from over. The chains were falling, but at what cost? And what secrets still lay hidden in the depths of the galaxy? With the first chain destroyed, the Free Stars Alliance emerged as a beacon of rebellion, uniting oppressed peoples everywhere. Yet Jae-hyun knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger and sacrifice. Still, he pressed on, driven by the promise of a brighter future. Even if the galaxy itself trembled at the thought of freedom, the destruction of the first chain sent shockwaves through the galaxy, both literal and figurative. News of the event spread like wildfire, carried by rebel broadcasts and whispered among enslaved populations. For the first time in centuries, hope flickered to life in the hearts of those who had long believed resistance was futile. On distant colonies, workers laid down their tools. On occupied planets, citizens took to the streets, chanting for freedom. The Dominion's iron grip on the galaxy began to weaken, but with hope came fear. The explosion near Jupiter's moons disrupted communication networks, leaving Dominion forces scrambling to regain control. Entire sectors descended into chaos as automated systems failed and enforcers struggled to maintain order. Among the confusion, Jae-hyun became a symbol, a quiet engineer turned reluctant leader, wielding an artifact that promised liberation. His face appeared on wanted posters across the galaxy, accompanied by warnings of severe punishment for aiding him. Yet despite the danger, more and more people joined the cause, drawn by the promise of a better future. The Free Stars Alliance grew rapidly, uniting disparate rebel groups under one banner. Resistance cells from every corner of human space pledged their support, sending ships, weapons, and fighters to bolster the fight against the Dominion. At the center of it all stood Jae-hyun, Hyrin, Eun-woo, and Soo-jin, each playing a crucial role in the rebellion. But as their numbers swelled, so did the weight of responsibility and the risks they faced. Kaelvorn, the Dominion commander tasked with hunting them down, wasn't idle. He analyzed every piece of data, tracked every movement, and pieced together patterns that others might have missed. To him, this wasn't just a mission, it was personal. Vord had spent decades climbing the ranks of the Dominion, proving his loyalty over and over again. Now, a group of rebels threatened to undo everything he'd worked for. And at the heart of it all was Jae-hyun, the man with the artifact. Vorn's pursuit intensified after the destruction of the first chain. Using advanced tracking technology, he pinpointed the rebels' movements, closing in on their location with terrifying precision. One night, as the Free Stars Alliance regrouped aboard a hidden base near Saturn's rings, alarms blared throughout the facility. "They found us," Soo-jin said grimly, checking the monitors. "Dominion ships are incoming." Eun-woo barked orders, directing everyone to prepare for evacuation. They couldn't afford to lose the base, or the people inside it. As fighters scrambled to defend the perimeter, Jae-hyun focused on the artifact, trying to use its power to mask their escape. But the strain was immense. Each time he activated it, his body felt weaker, his mind clouded by visions of Solara and the battles she fought centuries ago. Hyrin noticed the toll it was taking on him. "You can't keep doing this," she said urgently, grabbing his arm. "You'll kill yourself." "I don't have a choice," Jae-hyun replied, his voice strained. "If we don't stop them now, they'll crush us." Reluctantly, Hiren helped him to his feet, supporting him as they made their way to the last remaining ship. Around them, explosions rocked the base as Dominion forces breached the defenses. Flames licked at the walls, and smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe. Despite the chaos, there was no panic, only determination. These were people who had endured too much to give up now. As they boarded the ship, Unwu stayed behind to cover their retreat. "Go!" he shouted, firing his weapon at the advancing enforcers. "I'll hold them off." "No," Jae-hyun protested, but Hi-Rin pulled him back. "There's nothing we can do," she said, tears streaming down her face. "He's buying us time." With a heavy heart, Jae-hyun obeyed, knowing Unwu's sacrifice would not be forgotten. The ship launched just as the base collapsed behind them, consumed by fire and debris. In the silence that followed, grief settled over the crew like a shroud. They had lost a leader, a friend, and a hero. But even in mourning, they knew the fight wasn't over. Their next destination was clear. The second chain, located deep within the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. It was heavily fortified, guarded by fleets of warships and elite troops. Breaking through would require careful planning and a lot of luck. Soo-jin took charge of strategy, poring over maps and schematics to identify weak points in the Dominion's defenses. "We'll need decoys," she explained during a briefing. "Smaller ships to draw their attention while we slip past." Jae-hyun nodded. Though his thoughts were elsewhere, the artifact pulsed faintly in his hand, urging him forward. He could feel Solara's presence growing stronger, guiding him toward the chain. But her warnings echoed in his mind as well. "Freedom comes at a cost," she had said. "Are you prepared to pay it?" The plan was risky, but they had no other options. A team of volunteers piloted decoy ships, launching a diversionary attack on the Dominion fleet. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun, Hi-Rin, and Soo-jin slipped through the chaos, navigating treacherous asteroid fields to reach the chain. When they finally arrived, the structure loomed before them, a monolithic tower surrounded by shimmering energy shields. Drones patrolled the area, their sensors scanning for intruders. Soo-jin worked quickly to disable the shields, her fingers flying over the controls. "Got it," she announced triumphantly as the barrier flickered and vanished. Inside the chain, the air was thick with tension. Conduits lined the walls, pulsating with dark energy harvested from countless beings. It was a grotesque sight, a reminder of the Dominion's cruelty. Jae-hyun led the way, using the artifact to guide them deeper into the structure. Along the way, they encountered automated defenses, turrets and drones programmed to eliminate intruders. Hi-Rin covered their backs, firing precise shots that disabled the machines without harming her companions. Finally, they reached the core of the chain, a massive chamber filled with machinery humming with power. At the center stood a glowing orb, similar to the artifact Jae-hyun carried. This was the source of the chain's influence, the hub that controlled millions of minds. "We need to destroy it," Soo-jin said, examining the orb. "But it's shielded. We'll need to overload the system manually." Jae-hyun stepped forward, gripping the artifact tightly. "Let me handle it." "No," Hi-Rin protested. "It's too dangerous. You're already pushing yourself too far." "I'm the only one who can do this," Jae-hyun insisted. "Trust me." Reluctantly, Hi-Rin backed away, watching anxiously as Jae-hyun approached the orb. The artifact resonated with the core, creating a connection that made his skin tingle. Memories flooded his mind. Visions of Solara leading armies, rallying people to fight for their freedom. Her voice echoed in his ears. The chains must fall. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jae-hyun channeled the artifact's power into the core. Energy surged through the room, causing lights to flicker and machines to spark. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the system began to destabilize. Alarms blared, warning of imminent destruction. "We need to go," Soo-jin shouted, pulling Jae-hyun away from the orb. They barely made it out in time. Behind them, the chain exploded in a blinding burst of light, shaking the entire asteroid belt. Debris rained down around them as they fled in their ship, escaping just ahead of the shockwave. As they emerged into open space, the enormity of what they had done sank in. Another chain was gone, another step toward freedom taken. But the victory was bittersweet. Jae-hyun slumped in his seat, exhausted and pale. The artifact lay dormant in his lap, its glow dimmed. For now, its work was done, but at great cost. Hyrin placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "We did it." Jae-hyun managed a weak smile, though his eyes reflected the weight of what he had sacrificed. Freedom was coming, but it wasn't free. And as the galaxy continued to tremble under the weight of change, he wondered if anyone truly understood the price they would have to pay. The rebellion was no longer a whisper. It had become a roar. With 2 chains destroyed, the Free Stars Alliance grew stronger, drawing support from every corner of human space. Planets that had once cowered under the Dominion's rule now rose up in defiance, their people taking to the streets and dismantling symbols of oppression. The galaxy trembled as humanity reclaimed its voice, but the fight was far from over. Jae-hyun stood at the center of it all, though he often wished he didn't. The artifact had changed him, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Each time he used it, he felt pieces of himself slipping away, replaced by fragments of Solara's memories and emotions. Her presence was both a guide and a burden, pushing him forward even as it weighed heavily on his soul. Hyrin saw the toll it took on him, her concern growing with each passing day. "You're not invincible," she reminded him one evening as they sat together aboard their ship, hidden among the icy rings of Saturn. "If you keep using the artifact like this, you'll burn out." "I don't have a choice," Jae-hyun replied quietly, staring at the glowing object in his hands. "Every moment we waste gives the Dominion more time to regroup. We can't afford to slow down." Hyrin sighed, frustration mingling with worry. "You're only one person, Jae-hyun. Humanity doesn't need a martyr. It needs a leader who can survive long enough to see this through." Her words lingered in his mind, but there was no time to dwell on them. The next chain lay deep within the heart of the Dominion's territory, a fortress world surrounded by fleets of warships and guarded by elite enforcers. Breaking through would require everything they had, and more. Soo-jin devised a daring plan. Using stolen Dominion codes, they would disguise their ships as part of the Empire's fleet, allowing them to slip past outer defenses undetected. Once inside, a small strike team led by Jae-hyun and Hyrin would infiltrate the chain, while Soo-jin coordinated decoy attacks to draw attention elsewhere. It was risky, but it was their best shot. As the fleet approached the fortress world, tension crackled through the air. Every member of the crew knew the stakes. If they failed here, the rebellion might crumble. The artifact pulsed faintly in Jae-hyun's hand, urging him onward. He could feel Solara's voice in his mind, steady and unwavering. "This is the path. Follow it." The infiltration began smoothly. Thanks to Soo-jin's expertise, their disguised ships passed through the first layers of defense without incident. But as they neared the chain itself, alarms blared, revealing their true identities. Dominion forces scrambled to intercept, launching fighters and deploying ground troops. Chaos erupted as rebel ships engaged the enemy, creating a diversion for Jae-hyun and Hyrin to reach the surface. Inside the fortress, the air was thick with tension. Automated turrets lined the walls, targeting anything that moved. Drones patrolled the corridors, their sensors scanning for intruders. Hyrin covered their backs, firing precise shots that disabled machines without alerting reinforcements. Despite the danger, they pressed on, guided by the artifact's faint glow. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a vast room dominated by a towering structure pulsating with dark energy. This was the heart of the chain, the source of its power. Conduits snaked along the walls, feeding the structure with stolen life force harvested from countless beings. The sight made Jae-hyun's stomach churn, but he pushed the feeling aside. There was no turning back now. "We need to overload it," Hyrin said, examining the machinery. "But it's shielded. We'll need to disable the barriers first." Jae-hyun nodded, stepping forward. The artifact resonated with the core, creating a connection that sent waves of energy coursing through his body. Memories flooded his mind, visions of Solara leading armies, rallying people to fight for their freedom. Her voice echoed in his ears. "Break the chains. Set them free." Summoning every ounce of strength, Jae-hyun channeled the artifact's power into the core. Lights flickered, Machines sparked, and the ground trembled beneath their feet as the system began to destabilize. Alarms blared, warning of imminent destruction. "We need to go," Hyrin shouted, grabbing Jae-hyun's arm. But the artifact wouldn't let him leave. Not yet. Its glow intensified, pulling him deeper into the connection. Pain shot through his body as Solara's presence overwhelmed him, her memories flooding his mind. He saw battles fought centuries ago, worlds burning under the Dominion's rule, and faces of those who had sacrificed everything for freedom. Among them was Kao Vorn. Jae-hyun froze. Vorn wasn't just a Dominion commander. He was human. Or at least, he had been once. Genetic experiments had stripped away his humanity, turning him into a weapon loyal only to the Empire. In that moment, Jae-hyun understood why Vorn pursued them so relentlessly. It wasn't just duty, it was desperation. Vorn clung to the Dominion because it was all he had left. The realization hit Jae-hyun like a punch to the gut. Was vengeance truly worth it? Could redemption replace retribution? Before he could answer, the core exploded in a blinding burst of light, shaking the entire fortress. Hyrin pulled him away just in time, dragging him toward the exit as debris rained down around them. Outside, Sujin awaited their return, her face pale with relief. "Let's get out of here," she said urgently, helping them aboard the ship. They barely escaped before the fortress collapsed, consumed by fire and destruction. As they fled into the safety of open space, exhaustion washed over Jae-hyun. The artifact lay dormant in his lap, its glow dimmed. For now, its work was done, but at great cost. Back aboard their hidden base, the crew celebrated another victory, though the mood was somber. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made. Eunwoo's memory hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the price they paid for freedom. Yet despite the losses, hope burned brighter than ever. The rebellion was gaining momentum, inspiring others to rise against the Dominion. But Jae-hyun couldn't shake the image of Kao Vorn from his mind. Was Vorn truly beyond redemption? Or was there still a spark of humanity buried beneath layers of conditioning and pain? These questions haunted him as he gazed at the stars, wondering how much farther they would have to go before the galaxy could breathe freely again. For now, the fight continued. The chains were falling one by one, but the road ahead remained fraught with danger and sacrifice. And as the artifact pulsed faintly in his hands, Jae-hyun knew that their journey was far from over. The final chain loomed ahead, a dark monolith at the heart of the Dominion's capital planet, Zircon Prime. It was the source of the Empire's power, the nexus that bound countless species to its will. Destroying it would shatter the Dominion's grip on the galaxy forever, but reaching it seemed impossible. Fleets of warships surrounded the planet, their weapons trained on anything that dared approach. Automated drones patrolled the skies, and elite enforcers stood ready to defend the core. Jae-hyun stared at the holographic map projected by the artifact, his hands trembling slightly. The journey had brought them here, to this moment. Every step they'd taken, every sacrifice they'd made, led to this final confrontation. The rebellion depended on them now. Humanity depended on them. "We can't just charge in," Sujin said, studying the map with furrowed brows. "They'll tear us apart before we even get close." Hyrin nodded in agreement. "We need a plan. Something smarter than brute force." Jae-hyun didn't respond immediately. He could feel the artifact pulsing in his hand, urging him forward. Solara's voice whispered faintly in his mind, "The end is near. Trust yourself." But trusting himself wasn't easy, not when he felt like he was losing pieces of who he was with each passing day. Still, he knew what had to be done. "We split up," Jae-hyun finally said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "Sujin, you coordinate the decoy attacks. Hit their outer defenses hard enough to draw their attention away from the core. Hyrin, you'll cover me while I infiltrate the chain. Once I'm inside, I'll use the artifact to disable it. And if something goes wrong?" Hyrin asked, her tone sharp with concern. It won't, Jae-hyun replied firmly, though doubt lingered in his chest. We've come too far to fail now. The plan was risky, but there was no other option. The Free Stars Alliance launched their assault under the cover of darkness, using stolen Dominion codes to disguise their ships as part of the fleet. Decoy vessels engaged the enemy, creating chaos in orbit while Jae-hyun and Hyrin slipped past the outer defenses in a small scout ship. As they approached the surface, the air grew thick with tension. Automated turrets lined the walls of the fortress city, targeting anything that moved. Drones patrolled the streets, their sensors scanning for intruders. Hyrin covered their backs, firing precise shots that disabled machines without alerting reinforcements. Despite the danger, they pressed on, guided by the artifact's faint glow. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a vast room dominated by a towering structure pulsating with dark energy. This was the heart of the chain, the source of its power. Conduits snaked along the walls, feeding the structure with stolen life force harvested from countless beings. The sight made Jae-hyun's stomach churn, but he pushed the feeling aside. There was no turning back now. We need to overload it, Hyrin said, examining the machinery. But it's shielded. We'll need to disable the barriers first. Jae-hyun nodded, stepping forward. The artifact resonated with the core, creating a connection that sent waves of energy coursing through his body. Memories flooded his mind, visions of Solara leading armies, rallying people to fight for their freedom. Her voice echoed in his ears. Break the chains. Set them free. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jae-hyun channeled the artifact's power into the core. Lights flickered, machines sparked, and the ground trembled beneath their feet as the system began to destabilize. Alarms blared, warning of imminent destruction. We need to go, Hyrin shouted, grabbing Jae-hyun's arm. But the artifact wouldn't let him leave. Not yet. Its glow intensified, pulling him deeper into connection. Pain shot through his body as Solara's presence overwhelmed him, her memories flooding his mind. He saw battles fought centuries ago, worlds burning under the Dominion's rule, and faces of those who had sacrificed everything for freedom. Among them was Kao Vorn. Jae-hyun froze. Vorn wasn't just a Dominion commander. He was human. Or, at least, he had been once. Genetic experiments had stripped away his humanity, turning him into a weapon loyal only to the Empire. In that moment, Jae-hyun understood why Vorn pursued them so relentlessly. It wasn't just duty, it was desperation. Vorn clung to the Dominion because it was all he had left. The realization hit Jae-hyun like a punch to the gut. Was vengeance truly worth it? Could redemption replace retribution? Before he could answer, the core exploded in a blinding burst of light, shaking the entire fortress. Hyrin pulled him away just in time, dragging him toward the exit as debris rained down around them. Outside, Sujin awaited their return, her face pale with relief. Let's get out of here, she said urgently, helping them aboard the ship. They barely escaped before the fortress collapsed, consumed by fire and destruction. As they fled into the safety of open space, exhaustion washed over Jae-hyun. The artifact lay dormant in his lap, its glow dimmed. For now, its work was done, but at great cost. Back aboard their hidden base, the crew celebrated another victory, though the mood was somber. Lives had been lost, sacrifices made. Eunwoo's memory hung heavy in the air, a reminder of the price they paid for freedom. Yet despite the losses, hope burned brighter than ever. The rebellion was gaining momentum, inspiring others to rise against the Dominion. But Jae-hyun couldn't shake the image of Kao Vorn from his mind. Was Vorn truly beyond redemption? Or was there still a spark of humanity buried beneath layers of conditioning and pain? These questions haunted him as he gazed at the stars, wondering how much farther they would have to go before the galaxy could breathe freely again. For now, the fight continued. The chains were falling one by one, but the road ahead remained fraught with danger and sacrifice. And as the artifact pulsed faintly in his hands, Jae-hyun knew that their journey was far from over.